Did you notice the organ today? It doesn't play itself. Will Dannenberg is back with us, and we're very thankful to God. Welcome back here. Let me tell you a story about one of my many trips that I have taken. I have a friend who works for American Airlines, and sometimes I can get cheap tickets with him. I only pay like the taxes or something like that, and then he takes care of, the company takes care of the rest. So in the first trip that I was taking under his help, he told me that there is one thing. When you travel with this ticket, you have to dress well, because if there is room on first class, they will put you there. So you have to dress accordingly. And I said, oh, my. So I go, and I am at the airport, and on the gate, and they say, everybody in first class, plus you're welcome to board the plane. And on my ticket, I was like on the seat number 3 or something. So I thought it was first class. And I said, yes, that number is first class. Let's go in. Then I go in before anybody else into the plane. And I said, well, after all, it's not bad. It's not that bad that I have to dress up. So when I sit down, a flight attendant comes and says, may I take your coat, sir? Yes, certainly. You can take my coat. And then another one, can I get you something to drink? Wow, I didn't know that they do those things on first class. So yes, I would like to have some orange juice, please, or something like that. I don't remember what I ordered. And then lunch, it was a good lunch, and it was a long flight, so they fed me very well with good options. Have you ever had options in the... But after a while, when they kept coming to offer more services, I began to like it. And I looked back to the back of the plane, and after those curtains that they closed, and I said, wow, it feels a lot better to be here than back there. And I noticed a lot of risk. I said to myself, wow, I don't think I want this very often, because otherwise I might get used to it. And that would not be very good if I get used to this treatment. You can begin to think that you're better than anybody else, or that you deserve it. And then you begin to look at the rest of the people and say, well, I'm not like them. Somehow, I think that that's what happened to King Solomon. But today, I want to talk about the fact that we're no better, we're not better than anyone, we're not above the law. Before God, we're all equal. And we do have to be careful and protect our hearts, because this is a temptation that we all have. So we have that warning in the Bible in many places, specifically in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verses 20 through 23. And you will be able to read that on the next slide. It says, my child, be attentive to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them escape from your sight. Keep them, my words, keep them in your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and healing to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Keep your heart, protect your heart with all vigilance, because life emanates from it. Jesus In the Gospel of Mark, you will not have that slide, but you can read it in your Bibles. In Mark chapter 7, it's a verse that we all know by heart, or we are very familiar with. In Mark chapter 7, verses 20 and 22, Jesus says that what comes out of a person, that is what defiles a person. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All those things come from the heart, so therefore it's not so important to wash my hands. That's in the conversation, that's the context of this text. When Jesus and his disciples, they are being criticized by the Pharisees. Your disciples are not washing their hands. And then Jesus says, well, what comes inside is not so much what contaminates me, it is what comes out of my heart. You see the words. It is what contaminates me, it is what defiles me. Pride, arrogance, it can defile, it can spoil a whole person. That's what happened to Solomon. And we saw that last week. Solomon basically violated, he broke every single verse that was read from Deuteronomy chapter 17. I have them there on the screen for you again. Deuteronomy chapter 17. So, remember how Solomon acquired many horses, we read last week? How he married the daughter of Pharaoh, even though God had said, do not go back to Egypt. Do not trust them because they are idolaters and you were slaves in Egypt. You don't want to set yourself back under slavery. Do not acquire many wives. And I was very careful to explain that it's not that the wives, they are not to blame. He was himself going down the roads. So here in Deuteronomy, it says that he must not take many wives. It doesn't even say foreign wives. Just don't take many wives. You might think that you deserve them, that you're the king, that you're the better than anybody else, that you have special rights. So do not take many wives. Do not accumulate for yourself silver and gold. And we know that every single sin from this list Solomon committed, and he ended up then doing the worst of all of them, idolatry, abandoning God, thinking that he was above the law. And we know the results that all these took. Israel, little by little, was led into deeper and deeper distance from God and from one another. And the nation was destroyed. So first, the nation was split in two, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Then the Assyrians took over the northern kingdom, and then the Babylonians took over the southern kingdom where Jerusalem was and the temple was, and they destroyed it. Israel was then left to wonder, why did this happen? Don't we have a powerful God that protects us? If we put our faith in God, then why is our city and our temple destroyed today? Well, because you thought that you were above the law, and because you thought that you were better than everybody else. The king thought that way. Then the people adopted that attitude. They thought that they were better than everybody else. It is a slippery road that when we fall into it, it's very hard to recover and be back. So we have to we have to be careful. Protect our hearts from pride, arrogance. When Paul was writing to the Corinthians, I think that Paul was suffering from tendency to be proud. Don't you think so? Many times Paul says that he even was a thorn given by God, so that the grandeur, the splendor of his visions would not enlarge his ego too much. That's why he says a thorn on the flesh. So I think that Paul was struggling with pride, as all of us do, or can do if we're not careful. So Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he says this: what makes you different from anyone else? Why do you think that you're better than anybody else? Is it because you have many things? Well, what do you have that you did not receive? Think about that. The things that you have, the things that we as a nation have. Didn't we have people working before us that allowed us to come and to be born into a wonderful country? Because I was blessed enough to come into this country and I enjoy the things that this country has, that doesn't make me better than anybody else around the world. I was just fortunate that God allowed me to come here. You yourselves, maybe it was your parents or your grandparents that worked for what we have today. So what do you have that you have not received? I have a friend, she's from a previous church. She posted a picture this week on her Facebook wall. Her grandson was wearing a military uniform that her grandfather wore for World War I. And thank God they kept the uniform in the family. So her grandson was wearing it. I wonder all the feelings that he was going through wearing the uniform of his great-great-great-grandfather, something like that. All the sacrifice that his great-great-great-grandfather went through so that we could live in a free nation, and all the effort that was put into building our country after the Depression and after the 2 world wars. So what do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not receive it? So what is the sense in boasting? Whatever we have, we received it. And even if you worked hard for it. Many people are able to prosper because they work hard, and somehow God, also I would say luck, you're just in a better position, in a better place, or in a better country where you work hard and you can see the results. Some people in other countries work very hard and they cannot see the results because of the circumstances in which they're born. But even if what you have, you owe it to your hard work. Who gave you the strength? Who gave you the wisdom? Who gave you the skills? Who gave you the education? So that you would be wise enough to start a business and do good work and prosper and at least have a decent life that so many millions and billions of people in this world would like to have. Just a decent life without misery, without having to worry about a roof over their head, or a school, even if it was a humble school, or a clean glass of water to drink. So we have those things, and we have to remember we were given those things. Even if we worked hard for them, the energy and the wisdom and the skills that we put into working and building what we have, we received it from God. So we're not better than anybody else. We are not above the law. Speaking of which, what law are we talking about? Well, obviously we're talking about God's law. So God is talking to Solomon, or to all the kings in this text that we've read from Deuteronomy. And I want to emphasize that God says to the king, make a copy of this law for yourself from the copies that the Levites, the priests, have. Because at that time, the laws were handwritten, and it was very easy to change it. Make the law say what I want to say. So God says to the king, go to the Levites, go to the priests, they protect the books of the law. Go from them and make a copy of that law, and you are to read it every single day of your life, so that your heart would not be led astray. So, do we do that? Do we read? Do we drink from this copy of the law? Do you have your own copy of the law? Meaning, do you have your Bible and do you read it? Nowadays, you can either have it here as a book or have it in your electronic devices. It doesn't matter. The thing is that you are not only to have the Bible sitting on your night table, on your bed, not only there, but you're to open it and read it and drink from it. Just because I inherited my dad's or my grandfather's Bible, it doesn't make me know the Bible, you see. So do we read from it, and do we realize that we are not above the law? Now, I wonder if the comparison between David and Solomon, if we can draw from it to learn and understand our situation today in 21st century United States. You see, David was a sinner. Does anybody doubt that? We know that very well. David was a sinner, but he had a humble heart and he repented of his sins. He also worked hard so that his nation, Israel, could have peace, and he built Jerusalem. And he was on the right track. His son, Solomon, inherited the kingdom not because he deserved it, but because he was chosen by David, his father. David had older sons, even the elders to Solomon. David chose Solomon. So there was no reason for Solomon to disobey the law and to think that he was above it and to go down the slippery road of pride. So you had David that worked hard for the nation, then he passed on to his son, and they destroyed it. What are we to do with what we have inherited from our fathers, mothers, grandmothers, and grandfathers with this nation? In the book of Proverbs, in 16, it says, pride goes before destruction. Pride goes before destruction. A haughty spirit before a fall. Better to be lowly in spirit, along with the oppressed, than to share plunder with the proud. So I see there, I find in this text a key to protecting my heart. So, in the book of Deuteronomy we read, you are not above the law, you are not better than anybody else. Therefore, here in Proverbs it says, spend time with the oppressed. Spend time with those in need. Better to be with the lowly in spirit, along with the oppressed, than to share the plunder of the proud. So, what are we to do? If we keep serving those in need, we will be reminded where our mission is. Our heart should be where our mission is. Go and make disciples to the world. Go and teach them to fulfill, Jesus said, go and teach them to keep everything that Jesus taught. That is the great commission that we have. Go and teach them to keep all the words that I have taught you. And behold, I am with you until the end of time. I am with you until the end of time. So we have nothing to fear. We have prosperity. We have peace. We have joy. We have a bright future ahead of us if we do those things. May God bless us, and may God help us to continue in the track that David started, not going down the slippery road of Solomon. Amen.